A prisoner of war, or POW, refers to an individual who is captured and confined by a hostile force during or shortly after an armed conflict. Belligerent forces detain prisoners of war for various reasons, both legitimate and illegitimate. These reasons may include separating them from enemy combatants who are still active in the battlefield, with the intention of releasing and repatriating them in an organised manner after the conflict, showcasing military triumph, imposing punishment, bringing them to trial for war crimes, utilising their labour, recruiting or forcibly conscripting them into their own ranks, extracting military and political intelligence, or attempting to indoctrinate them with new political or religious ideologies. And of course, countless POWs have been captured and kept over the course of humanity's conflicted history, and the plight of the POW is made no more famous than in the events during and after one of humanity's most devastating conflicts, World War II. Sadly, it is near impossible to know the true amount of POWs during World War II, and today we can only rely on estimates on how many there truly were. Nazi Germany had about 3 million taken by the USSR, with over 474,000 dying in captivity, or about 15.2%. However, historian Rudiger Overmans maintains that it seems entirely plausible, while not provable, that over 1 million actually died in Soviet custody. Alongside this, there was an unknown number of Nazi POWs in Yugoslavia, where the death rate was over 50%, Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Denmark. And before the formal surrender of Germany, the Western Allies took over 4.5 million POWs, and another 3 million after the surrender. And sadly, there remained 1.3 million German POWs who remained unknown. The USSR had about 5.7 million POWs taken by Germany, with about 3 million dying under German supervision, about 56 to 68%. France had about 1.8 million taken by Germany, and Poland had about 675,000 POWs, 420,000 taken by Germany, 240,000 taken by the Soviets in 1939, and 15,000 taken by Germany in Warsaw in 1944. The United Kingdom had about 200,000 POWs. The Kingdom of Italy had about 114,000 lost or captured by the US and UK, and another 60,000 POWs captured by the Soviet Union. The United States had about 130,000, with 95,000 POWs taken by Germany. And lastly, the Empire of Japan, who had about 16,000 to 50,000 POWs captured by the Western Allies, 560,000 to 760,000 captured by the Soviet Union. Of them, it is estimated that between 60,000 and 347,000 died in captivity. And with this innumerable number of POWs captured during and after World War II, it begs the question, who was the last repatriated World War II prisoner of war? Andreas Tomar was the individual in question. During the Soviet Vistula Oder offensive, Toma, a 19-year-old Hungarian soldier from Nyíregyháza, fought near Krakow, Poland. Facing the might of the Soviet army, the Axis line fell, and more than 147,000 troops were taken prisoner. On the 11th of January 1945, he was captured by Soviet forces and taken via Ukraine and Belarus to the Soviet Boksitogorsk POW camp near St. Petersburg. Toma was a POW for the rest of the duration of the war. However, after the war's conclusion, he became ill, and he was moved 1,000 kilometers to the east, to a Soviet military hospital of a different POW camp, close to the town of Bystezhog. However, his journey was far from done. In 1947, once he had recovered from his sickness, he was admitted to a mental hospital in the Soviet river port town of Kotelnich, which became Tomar's home for the next 53 years. Tomar was officially removed from the POW register after this last transfer, because he had been admitted to a sanatorium, which meant he was no longer an official prisoner of war. This removal prevented the Hungarian authorities from learning anything about his whereabouts, and Toma was simply forgotten in the never-ending chaos that was the repatriation process in the immediate aftermath of World War II. Without knowledge of his whereabouts, he was formally pronounced dead in 1954. Trapped in the Soviet mental hospital, both the patients and the staff thought he was crazy, since he only spoke in what they thought was gibberish, but was actually his native Hungarian, which was not spoken anywhere in Kotelnich. What remains fascinating is that during the 53 years, Andreas Tomar never learnt nor adopted the Russian language, despite being essentially immersed in it 24/7, and as his days were spent surrounded by people who did not even remotely understand or possibly even know the existence of the Hungarian language, his attempts to speak were deemed futile. Even if it seemed a little bit unbelievable and far-fetched, it's not that difficult to comprehend how this unfortunate predicament happened. The Finno-Ugric group of languages, of which Hungarian is a member alongside Finnish and Estonian, is a fairly small and narrow collection of languages. Consequently, his language of Hungarian, which does not come from the much larger language families like the Romanic, Germanic or Slavic, could easily be perceived as non-existent and made up by the predominantly Russian and Slavic-speaking population of Kotelnich. This meant Tomar had ostensibly not had a single conversation in more than 50 years. In the hospital, he was registered under the name Andreas Tomar and would remain that way until Tomar was discovered in the year 2000 by a Czech linguist of Slovakian descent, Karol Moralczyk, who happened to come across him in Kotelnich. Tomar, who was now 75 years old, was repatriated to Hungary on August 11th of the same year. It was still up for debate whether he was psychologically sane, because he had spent most of his life in a Russian mental hospital. His identity was established by the results of a DNA investigation, and he was at last reunited with his remaining family, his half-sister Anna and brother Janos, who were still living on farmland close to their hometown of Nyíregyháza in eastern Hungary, the home Tomar had left in 1944 at the age of 19. The Hungarian Ministry of Defense promoted him to Sergeant Major in appreciation for his ordeal, and paid the soldier's salary for all the years he'd been absent because, in the eyes of the law, his service had been continuous. Andreas Tomar moved in with his half-sister Anna after his homecoming, who was given the responsibility of looking after him. Sadly, on the 30th of March 2004, at the age of 79, Andreas Tomar passed away naturally 4 years after his return to his own country he had left when he was just 19. But after his death, it makes one think, what if Andreas Tomar was never found in that small mental hospital in Kotelnich? This has been me, Jack, and if you're currently trapped in a Russian mental hospital, please leave a comment down below.